I'm organizing the stack of mail on my desk when I spot an envelope from Bellamy Gardens, the most exclusive wedding venue in town. Strange. I don't remember receiving anything from them before. I slide my finger under the flap and pull out a neatly folded contract, the elegant letterhead catching the morning light streaming through my apartment window. My coffee cup freezes halfway to my lips as I scan the document. There it is, my signature at the bottom of a contract, authorizing payments totaling $76,000 for my sister Destiny's wedding. Except it isn't my signature. Not really. The loops are too round, the slant too steep. It's a good imitation, but I'd know my own handwriting anywhere. The room spins slightly as realization crashes over me. This is Destiny's handiwork. Those distinctive curls at the end of each letter. The way she dots her I's slightly to the right. She's forged my name. On a contract for $76,000. My fingers go numb. The coffee cup slips, shatters against the hardwood floor. Dark liquid splashes across my bare feet, but I barely feel it. This can't be happening, I whisper to the empty room. I grab my phone with trembling hands, dialing the venue's number printed at the top of the contract. My heart pounds so hard I can feel each beat in my throat. Bellamy Gardens. How may I help you? A cheerful voice answers. This is Andie Collins. I manage, my voice unnaturally high. I'm calling about a wedding contract for Destiny Collins. Oh, Miss Collins. Yes, we're so excited about your sister's special day. Everyone here is talking about your generous gift. It's not often we see such a beautiful gesture between siblings. The first tear slides down my cheek before I can stop it. My generous gift. The one I never agreed to. The one I explicitly refused. Thank you. I choke out before hanging up. I sink into my chair, memories flooding back unbidden. 16-year-old me working double shifts at the ice cream shop while Destiny lounged by the community pool. My graduation money borrowed for her spring break trip to Cancun. The countless loans that disappeared into the black hole of her wants and needs. You're the responsible one, Mom would say, as if it were a compliment rather than a life sentence. Destiny's just finding herself. 2 months ago, at Sunday dinner, when Destiny flashed her enormous engagement ring, and Dad looked at me expectantly. We were thinking, he'd said, refilling his wine glass. Since you've got that promotion coming, you could help give your sister the wedding she deserves. I'd felt everyone's eyes on me, waiting. My hands had trembled beneath the table as I found my voice. I can't afford that, I'd said, the words barely audible. I'm still paying off my student loans. The silence that followed had been deafening. Mom's disappointed sigh, Dad's furrowed brow, Destiny's pout. Family takes care of family. Andie. Dad had finally said, his voice carrying the weight of authority that had shaped our entire childhood. That's how we raised you. Mom had reached across the table, patting my hand. Don't you want your sister to be happy? After everything you've accomplished, surely you can manage this one thing. But you have that promotion coming, Destiny had chimed in, as if my money were already hers to spend. The venue deposit is due next week. At that moment, I'd seen myself clearly for the first time, not a daughter or sister, but an ATM with a pulse. A resource to be tapped whenever Destiny needed something shiny and new. Now, staring at the forged contract, my phone pings with a new email notification. I glance down, seeing the subject line. Interior design position. Charleston office interested in your portfolio. Eleanor from work had mentioned this opportunity last week. 3 states away, a fresh start. I pick up the contract again, running my finger over the forgery. All those years of sacrificing, of putting my needs last, of being the responsible one, and this is how they repay me, with theft. With fraud. This ends now, I whisper, and something shifts inside me. Something that feels dangerously close to strength. Sleep refuses to come that same night. At 3 a.m, my laptop screen illuminates my face as I search through years of emails. My fingers feel numb, disconnected from my body as I type wedding into the search bar. The results populate my screen. There, buried among wedding spam and Pinterest notifications, I find it an email thread between Mom, Dad, and Destiny from 2 months ago. The subject line reads, Andie's contribution. My stomach knots as I click. She'll give in eventually. Mom wrote, she always does. Remember how she insisted she wouldn't pay for Destiny's car repairs last year? Within a week, she wrote the check. Destiny's reply appears below. If not, we'll figure something out. She's got the credit for it. A wave of nausea washes over me. They weren't just asking for my help, they were planning to take it regardless of my answer. They've been manipulating me for years. I whisper to my empty apartment. I open a new spreadsheet and title it, Family Loans. With methodical precision, I scroll through bank statements, credit card bills, and old emails. Each entry represents a promise broken, a debt unpaid. The summer I worked double shifts to lend Destiny money for her trip to Cancun. The graduation gift from Grandma that disappeared into Mom's temporary need. Dad's business venture that required just a small investment. By sunrise, the spreadsheet contains dozens of entries spanning nearly a decade. The total at the bottom glares back at me. $42,387. And now, a $76,000 wedding venue on top of it all. I rub my eyes, burning from exhaustion and tears I refuse to shed. The Christmas memory surfaces unbidden Destiny's pleading voice, as she borrowed my credit card for just one small gift for Mom. The January statement showed $3. 0-inch charges from designer boutiques. My phone buzzes at 9 that morning. A text from Destiny. Just saw the bridal suite at Bellamy. It's amazing. I'm thinking we should upgrade the flower package too. Only an extra $4 Kelvin. Thoughts? Attached is a photo of her posing in a plush room, champagne glass raised, her fiancé nowhere in sight. I don't respond. 20 minutes later, Mom calls. Andie, honey, did you see Destiny's message about the flowers? The venue needs to know by tomorrow. I'm not paying for flowers, Mom. My voice sounds stronger than I feel. A heavy sigh travels through the phone. This attitude isn't like you, Andie. What will people think if Destiny's wedding looks? Act cheap? The Henderson family has already commented on how generous you're being. Everyone's talking about it. I never agreed to pay for anything. Family supports family. That's how we raised you. Her voice drops, an expertly crafted mixture of disappointment and shame. I just hope you're not becoming one of those selfish career women who forget where they came from. After we hang up, I check my credit score, something I haven't done since buying my car last year. The number has dropped nearly 40 points. A hard inquiry from Bellamy Gardens appears in the activity log, along with a new line of credit. They didn't just forge my signature, they're actively using my credit. My phone rings again, Eleanor from work. Hey, did you think any more about that Charleston position? The hiring manager called me again yesterday. They're really interested in your portfolio. I didn't realize they were that serious, I say, straightening in my chair. Dead serious. The salary is 20% higher than what you're making now, plus relocation assistance. And frankly, Andie, her voice softens. You'd be away from all the family drama you've mentioned. For the first time in days, something like hope flutters in my chest. After we hang up, I call James, the only friend who knows the full extent of my family's financial expectations. They forged my signature, James, for $76,000. Silence hangs between us. Then, that's not normal, Andie. That's exploitation. That's a crime. His words land like permission validation I didn't know I needed. What if I just left? The question emerges before I fully form the thought. Honestly, it might be your only option. They'll drain you dry otherwise. Later, I sit at my kitchen table, updating my resume while Mom sends increasingly frequent texts about wedding details. My hands shake as I type, but not from fear. From something that feels dangerously close to possibility. The interview is scheduled for Monday next week during my lunch break. While my family thinks I'm reviewing fabric swatches, I'll be interviewing for a job 3 states away. Thank you for the recommendation. I tell Eleanor when I see her in the break room the next morning. You've earned it. She squeezes my shoulder. Your designs are exceptional. Charleston would be lucky to have you. For the first time in weeks, I smile. Really smile. I picture a life where my paycheck belongs to me, where no one has access to my credit cards, where family gatherings don't end with my bank account lighter. My phone buzzes with a text from Mom. Destiny added monogrammed napkins to the reception. Only $3 per guest. We're at $300 now. Will you call the venue to approve? I silence the phone and slide it into my desk drawer. Then I open my calendar and block Thursday lunch for important personal business. 3 states might not be far enough, but it's a start. Sunday dinner at my parents' house feels like walking into a trap. Before I even hang up my coat, Aunt Mabel corners me with a teary-eyed hug. You sweet, generous girl. she says, patting my cheek. Funding Destiny's entire wedding. Your mother told everyone. My stomach twists. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Andie, Mom swoops in, linking her arm through mine. The Hendersons were just asking about the venue. Come tell them how you insisted on Bellamy Gardens. The living room buzzes with relatives and family friends, all smiling at me with approval I haven't earned and don't want. Dad stands by the fireplace, holding court. My daughter Andie wouldn't hear of anything less than the best, he boasts to his golf buddies. She said Destiny deserves a perfect day. Words I never said, a generosity I never offered. Destiny flutters between groups, the center of attention in a pale pink dress. She catches my eye across the room and bounces over, something large cradled in her arms. Look what arrived today. She thrusts an elaborate floral arrangement at me. Crystal teardrops hang from silver-dusted roses. Sample centerpieces, only 12 per table, and we need 30 tables minimum. I told them you said the sky's the limit. 30 tables? My voice comes out strangled. How many people are you inviting? Mom appears with her leather-bound planner. We're at 300 now. That feels right for our family, don't you think? 300 guests at a venue I never agreed to pay for. My head pounds. The final guest count is due next week, Destiny continues, oblivious to my expression. Oh, and the planner needs your credit card for the deposit on the ice sculpture. The room spins slightly. I mumble something about needing air and escape to the back porch. Monday lunch break. I sit in my car during lunch, heart hammering as my laptop screen fills with the face of Gregory Winters, creative director at Charleston Home and Design. Your portfolio shows remarkable restraint, he says, studying something off-screen. Most designers your age overdo it, but your spaces breathe. Thank you. I believe in creating rooms people actually want to live in. My voice comes out steadier than I expect. What salary range are you looking for? 3 months ago, this question would have made me stammer apologies for wanting to be paid. Today, something shifts. Based on my experience and the Charleston market, I'm looking for $82,000 annually, plus standard benefits. The words emerge clear and confident. Gregory raises his eyebrows, impressed rather than offended. That's precisely our range for this position. When he makes a joke about Southern hospitality being more than just a saying in Charleston, I laugh a real laugh that startles me with its authenticity. We'll be in touch very soon, he promises as we wrap up. I sit in my silent car afterward, realizing my hands haven't trembled once. During that week, I gather my documents for the confrontation, and that's how the week passes. Saturday brunch arrives with an unwelcome surprise. I'm buttering toast when the doorbell rings. Who could that be? Mom asks with a performance of confusion. The answer comes in the form of Marissa Williams, wedding planner extraordinaire, who breezes into the dining room with 3 bulging portfolios. Andie, finally we meet. She extends a manicured hand. Your sister speaks so highly of you. Now, I brought the updated invoices for your approval. My approval? I ask, accepting the folder she thrusts at me. I flip through pages of extravagant expenses. Custom champagne flutes, monogrammed napkins, a string quartet, imported orchids. Each bears a notation. A. Collins approval required. These charges seem excessive, I say carefully, watching Destiny from the corner of my eye. What's this $10,000 line item for lighting? Marissa frowns. But your sister said you specifically requested premium theatrical lighting for the dance floor. Destiny's face drains of color. Andie loves dramatic lighting. Right, Andie? Could I see all the contracts, please? My voice remains calm despite the rage building in my chest. Andie's just being thorough. Mom interjects, reaching for the coffee pot. Marissa, have you tried my cinnamon rolls? Let me fix you a plate. As they bustle toward the kitchen, I snap photos of the invoices with my phone. That evening, James brings takeout and legal research to my apartment. In this state, you can break a lease without penalty if you can prove identity theft, he says, spreading papers across my coffee table, especially with documentation showing your signature was forged. Eleanor sends 3 links to affordable apartments in Charleston's north area. Not glamorous, her message reads, but clean, safe, and 20 minutes from the office. I click through the virtual tour of a 1-bedroom with a small balcony. The rent is reasonable. The distance from my family, priceless. The official email arrived to my private email account on Tuesday morning, and I got the job. The salary matches what I requested. The start date is 3 weeks away. I drive to an empty parking lot to make the call. I'm delighted to accept, I tell Gregory, my voice strong and certain. That night, I digitally sign a lease agreement for the Charleston apartment. The move-in date aligns perfectly with my escape plan. 2 more weeks until I escape, I whisper to my reflection. Standing in my apartment on Friday night, I survey what I've built through years of hard work. The vintage desk I refinished myself, the watercolor I splurged on after my first promotion, the bookshelf filled with design references. On my dresser sits a photo from my design school graduation. I'm beaming, proud and hopeful, unaware of how my family would use that hope against me. Tears slide down my cheeks, but they feel different, cleansing rather than broken. I deserve to keep what I've earned, I say aloud to the empty room. The weekend becomes a strategic operation. I record Mom discussing Andie's contribution to the wedding. I organize bank statements showing unusual charges. I document every text where I explicitly refuse to pay. Monday morning, I call a moving company. We need to schedule for a specific time. I explain. The 14th, around noon. We can do that, the scheduler confirms. Any particular reason for the precise timing? Yes, I say, drafting an email to the Bellamy Gardens venue, explaining the signature forgery. My family will be at a cake tasting. The moving day arrives with perfect weather. From my window, I watch Mom's SUV pull away with Dad, Destiny, and the wedding planner inside. My phone vibrates continuously with Destiny's messages about fondant options. 10 minutes later, the moving truck rumbles into the parking lot. I take a deep breath, my hand on the doorknob. The movers head up the stairs as my phone lights up again. 7 missed calls from Destiny in the last 3 minutes. The game is beginning. I smile and open the door to my future. We'll start with the labeled boxes. I tell the 2 men in matching blue uniforms. My voice sounds foreign to my ears, steady, authoritative, nothing like the hesitant murmur I've used around my family for 27 years. Inside, I hand the movers a detailed floor plan while dialing my landlord. Mr. Peterson answers on the second ring. I've documented the identity theft situation, I explain, sliding the folder of evidence into my messenger bag. The lease break fee should be waived under tenant protection laws. Wouldn't want this happening to my own daughter, he says after reviewing my documents. I'll have the paperwork ready tomorrow. I hang up, a small victory warming my chest. The movers work with military precision, wrapping my carefully curated furniture pieces while I sit cross-legged on the floor, laptop balanced on my knees. With a few keystrokes, I transfer my accounts to the Charleston branch. Another click cancels my credit cards, requesting new numbers for the replacements. My phone buzzes. Mom's name flashes on the screen, the 5th call in 30 minutes. I silence it, but seconds later, the voicemail notification appears. Andie Collins. Mom's voice wavers between anger and panic. Where are you? The venue needs decisions on lighting packages by 3. Call me immediately. Jetter? 3 more voicemails follow in quick succession. I play each one, recording them as evidence, as the movers empty my bedroom. My phone pings with a text from Destiny. What the hell, Andie? The venue says you haven't confirmed anything. I swear if you ruin this for me, I'll never forgive you. 10 seconds later, answer your damn phone. 20 seconds. After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us? Each message forms another link in a chain of evidence. I save them all. Dad's voice booms from the next voicemail. Family takes care of family, Andrea. You have responsibilities here. Don't make me come find you. K. I save this one twice. As I pack other boxes, the buzzing pauses long enough for me to check Facebook. Mom's status update appears at the top of my feed. Heartbroken when children forget where they come from, after everything we sacrifice as parents. Comments flood in beneath it. My college roommate Lisa writes, Andie is the most responsible person I know. There must be some misunderstanding. My cousin Jennifer chimes in. Wait, I thought the wedding was being scaled back? Aunt Carol told me it was costing over $70,000? Destiny's bridesmaid Tara asks, who's paying for all this? I thought Andie was just handling the coordination, not the cost. I smile as the first cracks appear in their carefully constructed narrative. My phone rings again, James, this time. The truck with your bookshelf and desk just left my place, he says. Everything's secure in my spare room until you're ready. Thanks, James. I don't know what I'd... Stop. You'd do the same for me. He pauses. Eleanor called. Your office is ready whenever you arrive. The weight on my shoulders lightens for the first time in months. Your new landlord emailed. James continues. She's fine with the early move-in, and Sarah from college says her guest room is yours for the transition week. Tears blur my vision as I realize I'm not doing this alone. My laptop pings with an email notification. The wedding venue's logo appears in the subject line. Urgent. Payment deadline notice. I open it, reading the polite but firm reminder that the next installment of $22,000 is due in 3 days or the reservation will be canceled. My phone buzzes with a text from my mother's friend who works at the catering company. Your mom asked me to extend the deposit deadline again. I can't keep doing this, Andie. Business is business. Another notification, a message from Destiny's future mother-in-law. Andie, as parents, we are concerned about the wedding finances. Could we discuss this before Sunday's dinner? My stomach flips as I realize how quickly their house of cards is collapsing. Later, while the movers load the last of my belongings, a text from Destiny's roommate pops up. Just for your information. Destiny's crying in her room about possibly having to cancel the florist and photographer. I take a deep breath as I prepare to walk out of my apartment for the last time. My gaze catches on the lone coffee mug I've left behind, the one that shattered the morning I discovered the forged contract. I've glued it back together, leaving visible cracks running through the ceramic. It sits on the counter with a note. Some things, once broken, can never be the same. Have you ever had to walk away from a situation to protect yourself? What gave you the courage? 4 days after moving, the text messages arrive like a swarm of hornets. 23 in the first hour after Mom discovers my empty apartment. 37 more by nightfall. How could you abandon your family? Mom writes. Dad's voice crackles through my voicemail. There could be legal consequences for backing out now, Andie. Think about what you're doing. I place my phone on the coffee table of my new Charleston apartment, watching it vibrate with incoming calls. The late afternoon sun casts long shadows across the hardwood floors. I've been here exactly 4 days, and already it feels more like home than any place I've lived before. Aunt Meredith calls next. Your mother is hysterical, dear. Everyone's so confused about what's happening with the wedding. Can't you just come to your senses? I let her message play to completion, noting how easily my relatives have been enlisted as reinforcements. The calendar on my kitchen wall shows the wedding date circled in red. 1 week from today. My phone lights up with Destiny's name. Against my better judgment, I answer. You selfish, ungrateful witch, she hisses. After everything we've done for you. Everything you've done for me? I repeat, my voice steady in a way that surprises me. Pay for the wedding or you're dead to me, she says. Simple as that. That's your choice to make. I end the call before she can respond. My laptop screen glows as I open my email. The document I've spent weeks preparing is attached, ready to send. I click on it one last time, reviewing each element. Formal letter to Bellamy Gardens explaining the forged signature. Handwriting analysis report highlighting the differences between my signature and the forgery. Audio file of Destiny telling her maid of honor, I signed Andie's name as a favor, to push things along. I press send. Within the hour, my phone rings with an unfamiliar number. The venue manager's voice is professionally restrained, but I hear the underlying tension. Miss Collins, we've received your email. This is highly unusual. We'll need to speak with your sister and parents immediately. I understand, I say. I've also notified my lawyer to contact the credit bureaus. The contract was signed without my consent or knowledge. After the call ends, I draft one more email, this one, to my extended family. I keep my explanation dignified, factual. No accusations, just evidence. I attach copies of text messages where I explicitly refuse to pay, bank statements showing the pattern of financial exploitation, and the venue's confirmation that the signature doesn't match my identification. My phone begins ringing again almost immediately, but not with the calls I expect. It's my cousin Thomas. Holy smokes, Andie. The venue just called Uncle Jim demanding immediate payment or they'll cancel everything. What's going on? Ask Destiny, I say. Or better yet, ask her fiancé's parents. I believe they've just been informed about the forged contract. Over the next few hours, reports filter in through family text chains, wedding guests receiving postponement notices, my parents frantically calling relatives asking for emergency loans, Destiny in tears at the florist, canceling the exotic arrangements, the groom's father insisting on a prenuptial agreement. When my phone finally goes silent around midnight, I pour a glass of wine and step onto my small balcony. The Charleston night air wraps around me like a warm blanket. For the first time in years, my shoulders aren't tight with tension. When I call Destiny the next morning, she answers on the first ring. "Come to apologize?" Her voice is rough from crying. "No," I say, the word clean and simple on my tongue. "I forgive you, but I won't forget. You've ruined everything." "I've started over," I correct her. "Charleston is beautiful. My new firm values my work. My apartment gets morning Sunday." "We're your family," she whispers. "The wedding bill is the consequence of your choices, not mine," I say. "Maybe it's time you learned what that feels like." I end the call before she can respond, placing my phone back on the counter. According to James, who still lives in my old city, my parents spent yesterday meeting with loan officers. Destiny has downsized from 8 bridesmaids to 4. The extravagant ice sculpture has been canceled, along with the fireworks display and the designer gown. My mother's final voicemail arrives that evening as I'm arranging books on my new shelves. "Andie," she begins, her voice catching. "We never meant for it to go this far." I let the message play to its end, then delete it without replying. Outside my window, the sun sets over Charleston, painting the sky in colors I never saw in my old life. Some bridges burn for a reason. I close my eyes and breathe deeply, feeling the weight of 76,000 expectations finally lifting from my shoulders. 3 months later, the morning light streams through my Charleston apartment windows, catching the spines of my design books as I arrange them on the reclaimed wood shelves. 3 months ago, these same books were packed in hurried desperation. Today, they stand as colorful sentinels of my new life. I smooth my hand over the coffee table I found at a local antique market, feeling the grain of the wood beneath my fingertips. My apartment is modest, but mine, truly mine, with no financial ghosts lurking in the corners. My phone buzzes with a message from Eleanor, wishing me luck with my newest project. I adjust my blazer, catch my reflection in the hallway mirror, and notice something different in my posture. My shoulders no longer hunch forward, carrying the invisible weight of family obligation. The southern sunrise bathes my small balcony in gold as I sip my coffee. The lightness I feel isn't just the absence of debt, it's the presence of possibility. 3 months into my new position, Marcus, the senior designer, leans against my desk on Friday afternoon. "Andie, we need these concept boards finalized for Monday's presentation. I know it's your weekend, but..." He trails off, expectation hanging in the air. "I'm sorry, but I have plans this weekend," I reply, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. "I'd be happy to come in early Monday to help finalize everything." His eyebrows lift slightly. "Really? I figured you'd be all about earning some brownie points." "I value my personal time," I say, the word "no" resting comfortably on my tongue instead of sticking in my throat like it used to. "I'll deliver excellent work during work hours." Later, walking along King Street, I marvel at how easily that boundary formed. No rehearsal needed, no guilt afterward. My therapist calls this progress. Dr. Levine's office has become a weekly sanctuary where family patterns are dissected with clinical precision. "The first time you say no is the hardest," she told me during our initial session. "Each time after gets a little easier." My journal entries confirm this. The first week in Charleston, woke up panicking about money. Last week, spent the whole day exploring without checking my phone once. The genuine laughter that bubbles up during lunch with my new colleagues startles me. At first it sounds foreign to my own ears, after so many months of tension. My housewarming gathering is small but vibrant a week later. Eleanor flew down for the weekend, bringing a potted fiddle leaf fig that now stands proudly by my living room window. James sent a care package with a handwritten note. "Proud of you" doesn't begin to cover it. Eleanor raises her glass. "To new beginnings and true family, the kind we choose." I blink back tears, realizing family isn't always determined by blood, but by who shows up when it matters. When Tara, our junior designer, confides about a client demanding extra revisions without payment, I recognize the familiar pattern. "Your work has value," I tell her, sharing my boundaries without sharing my scars. "And so do you." The satisfaction of helping someone avoid the path I traveled feels like closing a circle. When the email with pictures of Destiny's significantly downsized wedding appears on my screen, I feel no surge of vindication. I simply send a congratulations card online and continue with my day. The absence of anger surprises me most not because I've forgiven, but because I've moved beyond needing to. At sunset, I stand at the Charleston waterfront, the letter from my mother heavy in my hands. The envelope contains the first hints of genuine remorse I've seen in years. I don't rush to respond. The guilt that would have consumed me months ago has been replaced by quiet acceptance. Some bridges burn for a reason, I whisper to the horizon, watching the sun sink into the harbor. The water stretches endlessly before me, full of directions I might choose to sail. Is forgiveness always necessary for healing, or is sometimes walking away the greatest gift you can give yourself? I don't know the answer yet. But for the first time, I have the space to figure it out on my own terms.
I am Rachel, 33 years old, and today I watched my sister raise a glass of champagne at her lavish Hamptons wedding just to call me a useless fat pig in front of 200 high society guests. As the crowd erupted in laughter, I did not shed a single tear. I just sat there waiting. Because what my sister and her arrogant new husband did not know was that I had just bought the company he worked for, and I was stepping in as his new CEO on Monday morning. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever had to stand up to toxic family members who pushed you too far. The evening air in the Hamptons was crisp, carrying the scent of sea salt and thousands of imported white orchids that adorned every table. It was a picture-perfect wedding reception held at a sprawling rented estate that screamed old money and new debt. Crystal chandeliers hung from the massive outdoor tent, casting a warm, expensive glow over the 200 guests. Women in designer gowns and men in custom-tailored suits sat at the tables drinking premium champagne and dining on lobster. I sat at the head table pushed slightly to the edge, wearing a simple but elegant tailored suit. I was the maid of honor in name, only a prop for my younger sister Brittany to use for her aesthetic vision. At 30 years old, Brittany was the undisputed golden child of our family. She was radiant tonight, her face perfectly contoured, her wedding dress sparkling with hand-sewn crystals. Beside her sat her new husband Jamal. At 34, Jamal was a senior sales executive at a major tech firm called Apex Innovations. He was a tall, handsome African-American man who wore his ambition like a shield. He wore a custom Tom Ford tuxedo paid for by my parents, and he had a smug, self-satisfied smile plastered across his face. The clinking of a silver spoon against crystal cut through the low hum of conversation. Brittany stood up, her champagne flute raised high. The guests quieted down, turning their attention to the glowing bride. "I want to make a toast," Brittany announced, her voice echoing perfectly through the expensive sound system. She looked around the tent, flashing her brilliant, surgically enhanced smile. "I want to thank my amazing parents, Richard and Patricia, for giving Jamal and me the wedding of our dreams. And I want to thank my incredible new husband for being the most successful, driven man I have ever met." The crowd clapped politely. Jamal beamed, kissing her hand. But mostly Brittany continued, her tone shifting to something dangerously sweet. "I want to raise a glass to my older sister Rachel." I stiffened. I knew my sister better than anyone. I knew that sweet tone was the exact sound she made right before she went in for the kill. "Rachel has always been such an inspiration to me," Brittany said, pacing slightly behind the head table. "Growing up, I used to look at her and think, wow, I really need to take care of myself. I mean, having a useless fat pig for an older sister is the absolute best motivation a girl could ask for to stay in shape and find a rich husband." The silence that fell over the tent lasted only a fraction of a second before the laughter started. It was not polite, suppressed laughter. It was a roaring, genuine wave of amusement from 200 people. The sound hit me like a physical blow. I watched as my aunt at the next table covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking with mirth. I watched the groomsmen chuckling and raising their glasses. But the worst part was not the guests. It was my own family. I looked at my parents, Richard and Patricia. They were not horrified. They were not rushing to stop her. My mother was actually dabbing a tear of laughter from her eye, leaning into my father, who had a broad grin on his face. Jamal was openly laughing, wrapping an arm around Brittany's waist as if she had just delivered the most brilliant comedy routine of the century. Rachel really took one for the team, Brittany added over the microphone, riding the wave of the crowd's reaction. She stayed single, childless, and completely obsessed with whatever boring office job she has, just so I could shine as the beautiful, successful daughter. Let us give it up for Rachel, the ultimate cautionary tale. More laughter, more applause. The flash of the wedding photographer's camera went off, capturing my humiliation in high definition. My face burned. The heat radiating from my cheeks felt like a physical fire, but my hands gripping the white linen tablecloth were ice cold. Years of this exact treatment flashed through my mind. Years of being told I was not pretty enough, not outgoing enough, not worthy of the space I took up. They had always treated me like a stepping stone, a background character existing solely to highlight Brittany's supposed perfection. I did not cry. I had stopped crying over my family's cruelty a long time ago. Instead, a cold, calculating calm washed over me. I looked at Jamal, who was raising his glass to me with a mocking salute. He felt so powerful in that Tom Ford suit, so secure in his high-paying corporate job. He had no idea that the boring office job Brittany just mocked was actually me running Vanguard Equity. He had no idea that my firm had orchestrated a hostile takeover of Apex Innovations last Thursday. He had no idea that the corporate credit card he had been using to illegally fund this very wedding was about to trigger a federal fraud investigation. I took a slow, deep breath. The laughter was dying down and the band was preparing to start playing again. I had endured enough. It was time to leave them to their delusions. I placed my napkin on the table and pushed my chair back, the wooden legs scraping against the floorboards. I stood up, smoothing the front of my suit, fully intending to walk out of that tent, get into my car and sever ties with these people forever. But before I could even turn my body toward the exit, a heavy hand clamped down hard on my shoulder, its grip painfully tight. I looked down at the large, red-faced hand gripping my shoulder. The heavy gold Rolex glinting under the chandelier light belonged to my father, Richard. His fingers dug into my collarbone with enough force to leave a bruise. He leaned down, his breath smelling of expensive scotch and cigars, and shoved me hard. I fell back into my chair with a heavy thud, the wooden legs scraping loudly against the floorboards. Before I could even catch my breath or adjust my suit, my mother, Patricia, leaned across the table. To any outside observer, she probably looked like a loving mother whispering a sweet, intimate secret to her daughter. She maintained a flawless, camera-ready smile for the surrounding guests. But under the table, her perfectly manicured acrylic nails dug into my forearm like talons, pinning me in place. "Sit down," Patricia hissed, her voice a venomous whisper, meant only for my ears. "She is pregnant with the first grandchild of this family. Do you want to stress her into a miscarriage just because you are jealous and barren?" I stared at the woman who gave birth to me. The sheer cruelty of her words hung in the air between us. Barren. It was her favorite word to throw at me ever since I focused on building Vanguard Equity instead of hunting for a husband. She weaponized my lack of children, twisting my personal life choices into a supposed medical defect just to make herself feel superior. She knew exactly how to strike where she thought it would hurt the most, entirely convinced that my silence was a sign of weakness and submission. "You are always making everything about you." Patricia continued, her smile never wavering as she adjusted her diamond necklace. "Brittany was just making a harmless joke. She included you in her toast, and this is how you repay her. By throwing a tantrum and trying to storm out of her wedding reception." "You are so incredibly sensitive, Rachel. It is pathetic. This is exactly why you cannot keep a man. No one wants to deal with this kind of energy." Richard leaned in on my other side, creating a physical cage of parental toxicity. He tapped his heavy signet ring against the table, his face flushed with alcohol and indignation. "You are not ruining your sister's night," he muttered, his tone dripping with absolute authority. "You will sit here. You will smile. You will eat the food I paid for. You owe this family, Rachel. Do not forget who paid your hospital bills 3 years ago when you needed your appendix out. $2,000 straight out of my own pocket because you were too stubborn to get a real job with actual health insurance. You owe us for the very air you breathe in this tent tonight." I kept my face entirely blank. I did not flinch. I did not argue. Arguing with Patricia and Richard was like trying to reason with a brick wall. They thrived on a very specific narrative, a fantasy world where Brittany was the flawless angel who could do no wrong, and I was the ungrateful burden who needed to be constantly managed, disciplined, and shamed. They needed me to be a failure, so their own mediocre parenting could look like a heroic sacrifice. We remortgaged our house to give Brittany the wedding she deserves, Richard boasted quietly, leaning closer, so only I could hear his financial bragging. We pulled out all our equity to buy Jamal a brand new Mercedes as a wedding gift. We sacrificed for this family to secure our future. Jamal is a winner. He is about to be named vice president at Apex Innovations. He provides status. What do you provide, Rachel? Nothing but stress and disappointment. The least you can do is show some respect and act like a normal human being for one night. He remortgaged the house. I filed that crucial piece of information away in my mind. Vanguard Equity. My firm had recently been aggressively buying up distressed debt portfolios and secondary mortgages from regional banks across the East Coast. If Richard was stretching his finances that thin for a luxury car and a flashy party, his financial foundation was made of sand. He thought he was a powerful patriarch, putting his rogue daughter in her place. He had no idea he was lecturing the woman who could single-handedly liquidate his entire life with one phone call. Patricia released her grip on my arm, smoothing out the invisible wrinkles on my jacket sleeve with a patronizing pat. "Just look at her, Richard," she sighed softly, feigning deep maternal exhaustion, sitting there with that cold, dead look in her eyes. I do not know where we went wrong with her. Brittany is glowing, creating life, marrying a future executive. And Rachel cannot even muster up a single smile for her own sister. It breaks my heart. She wiped a fake tear away, playing the martyr flawlessly. I watched them both, my heart beating at a slow, steady rhythm. I watched how easily they lied, how comfortably they wore their cruelty disguised as parental concern. They were masters of the game, experts at making me the villain in a story where I was the only one actually working, actually building something real. They lived on maxed-out credit cards and borrowed prestige, pretending to be high society while drowning in debt just to keep up appearances for people who did not even care about them. The wedding band struck up a lively jazz tune, and the surrounding guests returned to their lavish meals. The brief interruption of Brittany's toast was already fading into the background of clinking crystal and polite, wealthy chatter. My parents leaned back in their chairs, satisfied that they had successfully contained the threat of my early departure. They took sips of their expensive wine, congratulating themselves silently on keeping the family outcast firmly in line. I remained seated, my posture perfectly straight, my hands resting neatly in my lap. I was not staying because they had forced me. I was not staying because I felt guilty or indebted for a $2,000 medical loan I had tried to pay back a dozen times, only for them to refuse it so they could keep holding it over my head. I was staying because the main event of the evening had not even started yet. The air behind me suddenly felt heavier. The ambient light from the chandeliers was blocked out. A tall, broad shadow fell over the white tablecloth directly covering my plate. I did not need to turn around to know who it was. The heavy scent of expensive cologne and sheer, unadulterated arrogance announced him before he even spoke. It was the groom, Jamal. It was the groom, Jamal. He stepped up to the table, positioning himself directly behind my chair. He wore a custom midnight blue Tom Ford tuxedo that stretched perfectly across his broad shoulders. He adjusted his diamond cufflinks, his dark skin glowing under the warm light of the chandeliers, looking every inch the powerful corporate executive he believed himself to be. He smelled of expensive bourbon and unchecked arrogance. Without a word of greeting, he tossed a heavy black leather folder directly onto my plate. It landed with a sharp thud, knocking over my crystal water glass. I did not flinch, as the ice water spilled across the white linen, soaking into the fabric just inches from my lap. "Open it, Rachel," Jamal commanded. His deep voice was loud, deliberately carrying to the neighboring tables. Several wealthy guests turned their heads, their eyes gleaming with the promise of more free entertainment. Brittany had already warmed them up with her vicious toast. Jamal was here to deliver the punchline. I slowly opened the leather folder. Inside was the final catering invoice for the evening printed on thick ivory paper. My eyes scanned the itemized charges. Beluga caviar stations, Wagyu beef sliders, vintage Dom Perignon towers. The total at the bottom was printed in bold black ink. $45,000. That is your contribution to this new family, Jamal stated, placing his large hands on the back of my chair and leaning in close. Your parents have been generous enough to host this spectacular evening. In fact, Richard and Patricia just took out a second mortgage on their home to buy me a brand new Mercedes-AMG for my wedding gift. The least you can do as the older unmarried sister who lives in some rented box in the city is cover the food. Patricia nodded vigorously, her diamond earrings catching the light as she leaned forward to support her new favorite child. It is only fair, Rachel. You have no husband to support, no children to feed, and no real expenses. We have a massive estate to maintain and appearances to keep up. You have nothing going on in your life. Be useful for once. Jamal chuckled, a low, rumbling sound of pure condescension. He walked around to the side of the table, so I was forced to look at him. Look at you. 33 years old, sitting alone at a wedding, working some dead-end office job that probably pays pennies. Meanwhile, I am about to be named Vice President of Sales at Apex Innovations. I close multi-million-dollar contracts before you even wake up in the morning. I am the future of this family. I bring status. I bring wealth. You bring absolutely nothing. He tapped a manicured finger against the leather folder. So, you are going to pull out whatever sad little debit card you have in that purse, and you are going to max it out tonight. Consider it an investment in the people who actually matter. I stared at the invoice. $45,000 of sheer excess, and they expected me to swallow the cost because they thought I was a pathetic, easily intimidated spinster. Jamal was standing there practically vibrating with ego, fully believing he was an untouchable king of the corporate world. Apex Innovations. The name echoed in my mind like a perfectly timed symphony. Do not make that face, Jamal sneered, entirely misinterpreting my silence for fear. He crossed his arms over his chest, looking down his nose at me. If you cannot afford it, maybe you can take out a high-interest loan. Or better yet, maybe I can get you a job answering phones at Apex once my promotion is finalized next week. My new CEO is going to love me. I am bringing in record numbers. I could probably pull some strings and get you a desk near the restrooms. You would be great at fetching my coffee. Richard slammed his hand on the table again, rattling the silverware. Pay the damn bill, Rachel. Jamal is going to be running Apex soon. You want to stay on his good side. If you embarrass us right now and refuse to pay, I swear I will make sure you are cut out of every family event for the rest of your miserable life. You will be completely alone. The threat was supposed to break me. It was supposed to send me scrambling for my wallet, desperate to buy back their conditional toxic love. They wanted me to bleed myself dry to fund their superficial lifestyle. Jamal wanted me to pay for his caviar while he bragged about a promotion at a company my private equity firm had just aggressively acquired. He was flexing his corporate muscles, entirely oblivious to the fact that his department was bleeding money. He was entirely oblivious to the fact that his corporate credit cards were already red-flagged in my system for embezzlement. He was mocking my apartment, unaware that my firm, Vanguard Equity, owned the luxury high-rise building he currently lived in. I did not cry. I did not shout. I did not jump up and cause the dramatic scene they were all so desperately hoping for. I just sat there, letting the sheer absurdity of their demands wash over me. The power dynamic in this tent was entirely backward, and they were too blinded by their own arrogance to see the guillotine swinging down toward their necks. I looked down at the $45,000 invoice, tracing the bold black numbers with my eyes. Then I slowly looked up at Jamal. I met his arrogant, condescending gaze with a dead-eyed, razor-sharp smile. You are absolutely right, Jamal, I said softly, my voice carrying a lethal, unshakable calm. This family deserves exactly what is coming to them. Without breaking eye contact, I reached down and slid my hand into my designer purse. I pulled my hand from my purse, entirely bypassing my standard banking cards and the sleek silver card I used for minor business expenses. Instead, I grabbed the heavy cold metal of my American Express Centurion card, the infamous black card. It is made of anodized titanium invitation only and requires millions of dollars in annual spending just to maintain. I use it strictly for high-tier corporate acquisitions at Vanguard Equity, but tonight it was going to buy me the greatest show of my life. I tossed the solid metal card onto the leather folder. It did not make the flimsy plastic sound of a standard credit card. It hit the table with a distinct heavy clack that resonated over the jazz music playing in the background. Jamal stared at the black rectangle sitting on top of his precious $45,000 invoice. For a second, his brain short-circuited. Then he burst into a loud, theatrical roar of laughter. He actually clutched his stomach, leaning back in his custom tuxedo. "You have got to be kidding me," Jamal gasped, wiping a tear of mirth from his eye. A fake black card. Really? Rachel, did you buy a novelty prop off the internet just to look cool at my wedding? That is the most pathetic thing I have ever seen. You realize they are going to run that through a machine, right? You are going to go to jail for fraud. Richard scoffed, shaking his head in deep disgust. He leaned forward, his face flushed with anger and embarrassment. Stop playing these childish games, Rachel. This is a high society event. We are surrounded by elite real estate developers and top-tier executives. Put that piece of metal junk away and hand over a real card before I have security drag you out of here for making a mockery of this family. Patricia hissed from her seat, glancing nervously at the wealthy guests at the adjacent tables. She is having a mental breakdown. I knew we should not have invited her. She is so desperate for attention she is using fake credit cards to pretend she is rich. Just take her purse, Richard. Find her debit card and run it. I ignored all three of them. I did not defend the card, I did not explain myself. I simply raised two fingers in the air, a subtle commanding gesture I used in boardrooms from Wall Street to Silicon Valley. Almost instantly, the estate manager approached our table. His name tag read, Monsieur Henri. He was a stiff, meticulously groomed man who had spent the entire evening catering to Brittany and Jamal with a barely concealed look of exhaustion. He had clearly dealt with their arrogant, newly rich demands all week. He stepped up to the table, a wireless payment terminal in his hand, preparing to deal with what he likely assumed was another argument over the bill. "Monsieur Henri Face," said my voice calm and authoritative. "I will be settling the balance for the bride and groom tonight." Henri looked down at the leather folder. His practiced, polite smile faltered the absolute second his eyes locked onto the black titanium card. Unlike my parents and my arrogant brother-in-law, a seasoned estate manager who catered to billionaires in the Hamptons knew exactly what a real Centurion card looked like. He recognized the weight of it. He recognized the laser-engraved details. His entire posture transformed. The subtle exhaustion vanished, replaced immediately by the rigid, hyper-respectful stance of a man standing before true, unadulterated wealth. Right away, Madame Henri said, his voice dropping into a tone of absolute reverence. He reached out with both hands to pick up the titanium card, handling it as if it were a fragile artifact. Jamal snorted, crossing his arms over his broad chest. "Make sure you check the name on that piece of tin, Henri. She probably stole it from someone at her sad little office job, or it will just decline and embarrass her. Go ahead, run it. I want to see her face when it gets declined for a $45,000 charge." Henri did not even look at Jamal. He maintained direct eye contact with me, treating me as the only person of consequence at the table. He slid the heavy metal card into the wireless terminal. There was a moment of silence. Jamal wore a smirk of absolute triumph. Richard crossed his arms, waiting for my public humiliation. Patricia sighed dramatically, preparing to apologize to the crowd for her rogue, delusional daughter. The machine let out a sharp, cheerful beep. Approved. The terminal immediately began printing the receipt, the paper whirring out in a long, white strip. Jamal's smirk instantly vanished. His dark eyes widened, staring at the printing receipt as if it were a venomous snake. Richard's jaw went slack. He leaned forward, blinking rapidly, trying to comprehend what had just happened. $45,000 had just cleared instantly without a security hold, without a phone call to the bank, without a single hesitation. Henri tore the receipt from the machine and placed it on the table in front of me, clicking a silver pen and offering it with a deep, respectful bow. "Thank you for your extraordinary generosity, madame. Is there anything else I can assist you with this evening?" I took the pen. I signed my name with a fluid, practiced motion. Then I looked up at Henri. I pitched my voice perfectly. Not a shout, but a clear, carrying projection designed to cut through the ambient noise of the wedding tent. I wanted every high society guest, every gossiping aunt, and every arrogant groomsman to hear me. "Yes, Henri," I said smoothly, handing the receipt back. "Please make sure to categorize this $45,000 payment strictly under charity donations for my corporate tax write-offs. As you can see, the newlyweds are completely broke and drowning in debt. I am just doing my civic duty to keep them out of bankruptcy court for one more night." The silence that crashed down over the wedding tent was absolute. The jazz band actually stopped playing, a stray saxophone note hanging awkwardly in the air. Gasps rippled through the surrounding tables. The wealthy elites, the real estate developers, the corporate executives, they all heard it. The illusion of Jamal and Brittany's lavish wealth shattered into a million irreparable pieces. Whispers ignited like wildfire across the venue. They heard the bride and groom were broke. They heard the quiet single sister had just casually dropped $45,000 as a tax write-off. Richard looked like he was having a stroke. Patricia hid her face behind her hands, the social humiliation practically burning her alive. Jamal stood frozen, his chest heaving, his powerful corporate persona entirely castrated by a single sentence. He realized in real time that he was not the richest man in the room. He was a charity case. But it was Brittany who reacted the loudest. Her fairy tale wedding, her narrative of being the superior wealthy golden child had been publicly slaughtered. She realized everyone was staring at her with pity and judgment. Her face turned a violent, blotchy purple with uncontrollable rage. She let out a guttural shriek, her perfectly manicured hands lunging across the white tablecloth as she grabbed a full glass of red wine. The dark crimson liquid arched through the air in slow motion. It hit the lapel of my tailored silk suit, soaking instantly into the pristine fabric and splashing heavily against my collarbone. Drops of vintage Cabernet Sauvignon splattered across my cheeks, running down my neck and staining my white blouse like fresh blood. The crowd surrounding us gasped collectively. A few wealthy guests at the nearest tables actually jumped out of their seats to avoid the splash zone, their eyes wide with shock. I did not move a single muscle. I did not flinch. I did not reach for a napkin to dry myself. I did not even raise a hand to wipe the wine dripping from my chin. I simply closed my eyes for one brief, calculated second, feeling the cold liquid seep into my clothes, and then I opened them to lock my gaze entirely onto my sister. "You jealous, bitter, miserable witch!" Brittany shrieked, her voice cracking with pure, unhinged hysteria. She threw the empty crystal goblet onto the table, shattering the fragile glass against a porcelain salad plate. "How dare you! How dare you try to ruin my perfect day with your pathetic little stunts? You think you are better than us because you saved up some money to buy a flashy credit card? You are nothing. You will always be nothing." Patricia frantically grabbed Brittany by the arm, her face pale with the terror of social ruin. "Brittany, sweetheart, lower your voice, the investors are looking." But Brittany was too far gone. The illusion of her flawless, wealthy fairy tale had been ripped away, and she was thrashing wildly to get it back. She pointed a shaking finger at my wine-stained chest. "My husband is Jamal. He is the future vice president of Apex Innovations. He is going to be running a billion-dollar tech empire while you rot in your rented apartment. He is going to crush you. He is going to make sure you never find work in this city again." Richard glared at me, his fists clenched at his sides. "Look what you have done, Rachel. You are a disgrace. You provoked her. You humiliated this family on purpose just because you cannot stand to see your sister happy and wealthy." Jamal stepped forward, straightening his custom Tom Ford jacket. He puffed out his chest, desperate to salvage his crushed ego in front of the whispering elite guests. He looked down at me, his eyes filled with absolute contempt. "Look at you! Jamal sneered, his deep voice carrying over the murmurs of the crowd. Covered in wine, embarrassing yourself in front of my network. My wife is absolutely right. You are a complete joke. You think a parlor trick with a credit card changes the hierarchy? Here I am untouchable. The new ownership at Apex just cleared out the old dead weight in the executive suite. They are making room for the real producers, men like me. My new CEO is going to hand me the keys to the kingdom by Monday morning. I will have more power in my little finger than you will see in your entire pathetic life. Richard puffed up, aligning himself with Jamal's supposed power. You hear that, Rachel? You are messing with the wrong people. Jamal is a winner. You are just a sad, lonely woman trying to buy attention. I let the wine drip onto my lap. I did not break eye contact with Jamal. I knew exactly what was happening at Apex Innovations. I knew because my signature was on the buyout documents that had terminated the old executive board just 48 hours ago. I knew because my forensic accountants had spent the entire weekend tearing through Jamal's departmental budgets. I watched him gloat, completely unaware that he was standing on a trapdoor, and my hand was already resting on the lever. Before Jamal could spit out another insult, a sharp, piercing marimba ringtone suddenly cut through the tension. It was coming from the inner pocket of his tuxedo jacket. Jamal frowned, reaching into his coat, annoyed by the interruption. But as he pulled out the phone and glanced at the glowing screen, his arrogant sneer widened into a massive, triumphant grin. He held the phone up so Richard, Patricia, and Brittany could see the caller ID. Speak of the devil, Jamal boasted, his voice booming with renewed aggressive confidence. It is the Apex Executive Board. They must be calling to finalize my promotion package right now. Let me show you how a real power player handles business, Rachel. Take notes. He swiped the screen to accept the call and deliberately put it on speakerphone, holding the device in the center of our toxic little circle. He wanted everyone at the head table to hear his glorious coronation. Jamal speaking? He answered, oozing sleazy corporate charm. I am actually at my wedding reception right now, but for the board, I always have time. What can I do for you, gentlemen, tonight? The voice that echoed out of the speaker was not warm. It was not congratulatory. It was the icy, mechanical, and lethal voice of David Caldwell, the chief legal counsel I had personally installed at Apex yesterday to clean house. This is David Caldwell, chief legal counsel for the new transition team at Apex Innovations, the voice announced flatly. This is not a congratulatory call. Jamal's smile faltered. The smugness drained out of his dark eyes, replaced by a flicker of genuine confusion. Excuse me, is there a problem with the vice president paperwork? I was told my promotion was guaranteed after the merger. There is no vice president paperwork for you, Caldwell stated, every word striking the air like a hammer. You are hereby ordered to appear in the main executive boardroom at exactly 8 o'clock on Monday morning. Your keycard access to the rest of the building has been immediately revoked. Jamal visibly panicked. His hands started shaking slightly as he gripped the phone. Revoked. What are you talking about? I am the top revenue driver in the sales department. I have the best numbers in the region. I demand to know what this is about. You will be meeting directly with the new CEO. Caldwell answered, his tone completely void of emotion. You are required to provide a full itemized explanation for a $2 million deficit discovered in your department's accounts during our hostile takeover audit today. Bring legal representation. If you are 1 minute late, we will bypass termination and hand the forensic financial file directly to federal authorities. Enjoy the rest of your wedding. The line went dead with a sharp click. The silence that followed was suffocating. Jamal's hand slowly dropped to his side. The phone slipped from his fingers and clattered against the wooden floorboards. The arrogant, untouchable groom who had just demanded $45,000 from me was gone. In his place stood a man whose entire world had just been vaporized. His face lost all its color, turning a sick ashen gray. He looked utterly terrified. The phone lay on the floor, its screen glowing in the dim light beneath the table. The sudden agonizing silence at our table stood in stark contrast to the lively chatter and jazz music echoing through the rest of the reception tent. The illusion of power so meticulously maintained by my family had vanished in the span of a 60-second phone call. Richard stared at the dropped phone, his mouth agape. Patricia clutched her pearl necklace, her eyes darting frantically between Jamal and the surrounding guests, terrified that someone else had overheard the devastating call. Brittany stood frozen, the empty wine glass still dangling loosely from her fingers, her face a mask of shock and dawning horror. Jamal was a statue. His broad chest rose and fell in rapid, shallow breaths. The man who had sneered at me, who had arrogantly demanded I pay his $45,000 catering bill, looked as if the ground beneath his feet had suddenly turned to quicksand. A $2 million deficit. Meeting with the new CEO. Bring legal representation. The words hung in the air, invisible but suffocatingly heavy. I looked down at my wine-soaked silk suit, feeling the damp fabric clinging to my skin. I did not move to wipe it away. Instead, I slowly raised my eyes to meet Jamal's terrified gaze. "You should really pick that up, Jamal," I said softly, my voice perfectly level, slicing through the stunned silence at the table. "You would not want to miss any more important calls from the executive board. After all, you are the future of Apex Innovations." Without waiting for a response, I pushed my chair back, the legs scraping against the floorboards one final time. I stood up, my posture straight, holding my ruined jacket closed with one hand. I did not look at my parents. I did not look at my sister. I turned my back on the lavish, fraudulent wedding and walked out of the tent, my heels clicking sharply against the wooden walkway, leaving them to drown in the reality of their impending ruin. Sunday morning broke over the Hamptons with a sickly, humid heat matching the suffocating paranoia inside the estate. Inside the massive rented mansion, the post-wedding glow was entirely absent. Jamal paced the length of the extravagant master suite, his tie discarded, his dress shirt unbuttoned. He was frantic, aggressively rehearsing a defense speech, muttering financial jargon and throwing his hands up in frustrated gestures. "It is a misunderstanding," Jamal snapped, glaring at Brittany, who sat curled on the edge of the four-poster bed, clutching a silk pillow. "The transition team is just flexing their muscles. They want to see how I handle pressure. That is all this is. A loyalty test from the new CEO." Brittany wiped away a tear, her carefully planned post-wedding brunch outfit ruined by her distress. "But they said a $2 million deficit, Jamal. They said bring a lawyer. You told me the corporate card was practically unlimited. You told me it was an executive perk." Jamal whirled around, pointing an accusatory finger at her. "Keep your voice down. Do not talk about the corporate card. I manage those accounts. I brought in 10 times that amount in revenue. The new CEO just needs to see my portfolio. Once I show them the projections for the next quarter, this whole audit thing goes away. They need me. I am the only one who knows the Asian market accounts. I will walk in there tomorrow, demand a seat at the table, and secure that VP title. They cannot run that sales division without me." His aggressive bluster filled the room, but the slight tremor in his hands betrayed his deep-rooted panic. He was attempting to gaslight himself, clinging desperately to the delusion of his own indispensability. He believed his arrogance could overpower a forensic audit. Miles away in the heart of Manhattan, the atmosphere was drastically different. The Vanguard Equity penthouse office was an expanse of dark mahogany, brushed steel, and floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. The room was silent, save for the hum of high-end servers and the quiet shuffling of papers. I sat at the head of a massive conference table, having swapped the wine-stained suit for a sharp slate-gray blazer. The air conditioning was crisp, maintaining the clinical-focused environment I required. Across from me sat Wyatt, my lead corporate attorney. Wyatt was a shark in a tailored suit, a man who dismantled fraudulent executives for sport. Flanking him were 3 forensic accountants, their eyes glued to dual monitor setups, rapidly tracing the labyrinth of Jamal's financial deception. "We have finished mapping the shell companies, Rachel," Wyatt said, his voice calm and precise, slicing through the quiet room. He created 3 fictitious consulting firms to route Apex funds directly into his personal offshore accounts. The $2 million deficit is just the surface layer. The deeper we dig, the more blatant the embezzlement becomes. I leaned forward, clasping my hands on the cool mahogany table. "Detail the expenditures, Wyatt. I want to know exactly what my family considers executive perks." One of the accountants, a young woman with sharp eyes, handed Wyatt a consolidated report. Wyatt scanned the top page, a tight, grim smile forming on his lips. He slid the heavy manila folder across the smooth surface of the table until it rested directly in front of me. He was not even trying to hide it properly, Wyatt stated, tapping the folder. He used the primary Apex corporate card for personal expenses over the last 8 months. The custom Mercedes-AMG purchased outright with company funds disguised as a fleet vehicle upgrade. The rental for the Hamptons estate this weekend, billed as an off-site corporate strategy retreat. And the 6 Hermes Birkin bags he gifted your sister. Wyatt shook his head. Categorized as client appreciation gifts. It is textbook corporate fraud, Rachel. It is arrogant, sloppy, and entirely illegal. We have him dead to rights. I opened the folder, my eyes tracing the highlighted transactions. Every lavish detail of Brittany's perfect life, every boast Richard had made about Jamal's wealth, every insult they had hurled at me regarding my rented apartment. It was all funded by stolen money. Money stolen from the company I now owned. They had mocked my financial status while completely subsidizing their fraudulent lifestyle with my assets. I closed the folder, the thick paper making a soft, definitive snap. The pieces were all perfectly aligned. The trap was set, and the bait had already been swallowed. Jamal believed he was walking into a negotiation tomorrow. He believed he was going to leverage his sales figures to secure a vice president title. He had no idea he was walking directly into a slaughterhouse. I looked up at Wyatt, my expression entirely void of sympathy or hesitation. The time for familial tolerance had expired the moment they threw that wine on me. Lock the boardroom doors at 8 a.m., I said softly. Lock the boardroom doors at 8 a.m. Monday morning arrived with a blinding, harsh sunlight that reflected off the towering glass and steel facade of the Apex Innovations headquarters in downtown Manhattan. The building was a monument to corporate power, a sleek monolith of modern architecture that intimidated most who walked through its revolving doors. But Jamal did not feel intimidated. As he stepped out of his black town car, handing the keys to the valet with a dismissive flick of his wrist, he felt like a conquering king returning to claim his throne. He had spent the entire Sunday convincing himself that the phone call from David Caldwell was nothing more than a high-level corporate stress test. In Jamal's mind, billionaire transition teams did not fire their top producers. They tested them. They wanted to see if the man handling the Asian market accounts would crack under the pressure of a random audit. He had dressed specifically for the occasion, wearing a bespoke charcoal pinstripe suit, a blood-red silk tie, and the arrogant swagger of a man who believed his own lies. He adjusted his platinum cufflinks, rolled his shoulders, and strode into the grand marble lobby. The morning rush was in full swing, but Jamal walked through the sea of employees like Moses parting the Red Sea. He did not say good morning. He did not nod to the security guards. He simply expected people to move out of his way, and they did. He stepped into the executive elevator just as the doors were closing, shoving his leather briefcase forward to block the sensor. The doors slid open again, revealing a young, nervous-looking intern holding a stack of coffee trays. The intern stumbled backward, spilling a few drops of hot coffee onto the pristine, mirrored floor of the elevator car. "Watch where you are standing!" Jamal snapped, his voice echoing in the confined space. He looked the young man up and down with absolute disgust. "What floor are you pressing, floor 12, sir?" The intern stammered, his hands shaking slightly as he balanced the cardboard trays. Jamal hit the button for floor 12, then immediately hit the button for floor 50, the executive suite. He leaned against the glass back wall, looking at his reflection and smoothing his tie. "You are spilling coffee in the executive lift, kid. If you are going to be a glorified delivery boy, at least have the decency to do it without making a mess. I am heading up to a meeting with the new CEO to finalize my vice president contract. If I step in that puddle and ruin my $4,000 shoes before I walk into the boardroom, I will make sure Human Resources rips up your internship papers before lunch." The intern swallowed hard, staring at his feet. "I am sorry, sir. It will not happen again. It better not." Jamal sneered as the elevator pinged at the 12th floor. "Get out!" Jamal rode the rest of the way up to the executive floor alone, basking in the quiet hum of the machinery. He pulled out his phone, checking his reflection one last time. He looked powerful. He looked essential. He repeated his mental script. The $2 million deficit was a creative accounting strategy. The luxury car was a necessary networking tool. The Hamptons estate rental was a high-level client retention event. The new faceless owner of Apex Innovations would understand. Billionaires respected aggressive ambition. They respected men who took what they wanted and drove revenue. The elevator doors opened silently on the 50th floor. The executive level was completely different from the bustling sales floors below. It was a hushed, cavernous space lined with frosted glass walls, thick acoustic carpeting, and abstract modern art. The air up here smelled of polished wood and expensive cleaning supplies. Jamal strode out, his leather shoes sinking into the carpet. He passed the glass-walled offices of the senior sales directors. He stopped at the open door of the regional sales manager, a man named Henderson, who was frantically typing at his computer. "Henderson," Jamal barked, not bothering to knock. "I need the Q3 projections for the Tokyo account on my desk by noon. Do not send me the preliminary numbers. I want the finalized aggressive targets." Henderson looked up, visibly stressed. "Jamal, the new transition team locked us out of the Tokyo files this morning. IT said there is a system-wide security protocol happening." Jamal waved his hand dismissively. "That is just Caldwell flexing his administrative muscles. I'm going into the boardroom right now to meet the new CEO and sort out this transition nonsense. Once my VP title is officially on paper, I will override the IT lockdown. Just have the hard copies ready. We are scaling up operations, and I will not let some administrative audit slow down my division." He did not wait for Henderson to reply. He turned and continued his march down the long corridor toward the main executive boardroom. His heart beat with a steady adrenaline-fueled rhythm. This was the moment. The minor humiliation at the wedding was already fading from his mind, replaced entirely by the intoxicating prospect of absolute corporate power. He envisioned walking out of the boardroom in an hour, calling Brittany, and telling her they were going to start looking for a permanent summer home in the Hamptons. He imagined laughing at Rachel and her little titanium credit card, completely secure in his new executive dominance. He reached the end of the hallway. The double doors of the main executive boardroom loomed before him. They were massive, constructed of solid dark oak with heavy brushed steel handles. This was the sanctum, the room where careers were made and destroyed. Jamal checked his gold Rolex. It was exactly 7:59. Perfect. He was punctual, confident, and ready to demand his throne. He straightened his posture, took one deep breath to inflate his chest, and grabbed the heavy steel handles. He pushed the heavy oak doors open with a forceful, commanding shove. The boardroom was vast, flooded with morning sunlight pouring in through the floor-to-ceiling panoramic windows that overlooked the Manhattan skyline. The long, polished mahogany table stretched out like a runway. The room was deathly quiet. At the far end of the table, silhouetted against the glaring city light, sat the high-backed black leather CEO chair. It was turned away from the door facing the window. Jamal stepped fully into the room, letting the heavy oak doors click shut behind him. The sound sealed him inside the cavernous space. He straightened his blood-red tie one last time and cleared his throat, projecting his deep, authoritative sales voice across the polished mahogany table. "Good morning. I am Jamal Davis, Senior Director of the Asian Market Division. I was told to be here at 8 o'clock sharp to discuss my transition to Vice President." The room remained perfectly silent for 5 agonizing seconds. The high-backed leather chair did not move. Jamal felt a brief flicker of irritation. Billionaire CEOs loved their power plays, making their subordinates wait, forcing them to stand while they stared out at the Manhattan skyline. Jamal took a confident step forward, resting his hands on the back of one of the leather guest chairs. "I know we have some minor accounting discrepancies to clear up from the transition audit," Jamal added smoothly, shifting into his best pitch mode. "But I can assure you my division is driving record profits." Whatever David Caldwell told you about the $2 million deficit is simply a matter of aggressive expansion spending. If we can just look at the quarterly projections. The heavy leather chair slowly began to swivel. Jamal stopped talking. He braced himself to meet the gaze of an older, ruthless Wall Street titan. He readied his best firm handshake and his most winning corporate smile. The chair completed its rotation. Jamal stopped breathing. His heart hit his ribs like a sledgehammer. The confident, arrogant smile froze on his face, rapidly decaying into a mask of pure, unadulterated shock. I sat in the center of the oversized CEO chair, leaning back comfortably with my legs crossed. I wore the same slate gray blazer I had worn the day before, my hair pulled back into a severe, sleek knot. I did not look like the sister-in-law he had mocked at the wedding reception. I did not look like the single pathetic woman he had demanded $45,000 from. I looked exactly like what I was, a corporate predator who had just trapped her prey. To my left stood Wyatt, my lead corporate attorney, holding a thick manila folder. His expression was entirely devoid of sympathy. To my right, stepping out from the shadows near the panoramic windows, were two massive men in dark suits. Corporate security. They stood with their hands clasped in front of them, their eyes locked onto Jamal. Jamal stared at me, his mouth open but no sound came out. He blinked rapidly, his brain desperately trying to process a visual reality that directly contradicted everything he believed about his life, his family, and his power. The cognitive dissonance was so violent, I could practically see the gears grinding to a halt behind his eyes. He looked at me, then at Wyatt, then at the security guards, and then back to me. "Rachel," Jamal whispered. His voice was completely stripped of its booming authority. It sounded hollow and weak. "Good morning, Jamal," I said. My voice was calm, steady, and chillingly polite. "Please take a seat. We have a lot of financial discrepancies to cover, and you are currently wasting my time." The sound of my voice seemed to snap him out of his paralysis. The shock mutated instantly into aggressive defensive rage. His ego simply could not allow him to accept the reality sitting right in front of him. He slammed his hands down on the back of the guest chair, his knuckles turning white. "What kind of sick joke is this?" Jamal demanded, his voice rising in volume and pitch. "How did you get up here? Did you follow me? Did you sneak past the lobby security just to continue your little tantrum from the wedding?" I did not flinch. I did not raise my voice. I simply watched him unravel. "You are completely out of your mind, Rachel," Jamal shouted, taking an aggressive step forward. Wyatt stepped up immediately, and the two security guards shifted their weight, their hands dropping to their sides. Jamal stopped, pointing a shaking finger at me. "You think you can just waltz into a secure corporate building, break into the executive boardroom, and play CEO? You are having a mental breakdown. This is trespassing. This is corporate espionage." He turned wildly toward the two security guards, his face flushed with panic and fury. "Do your jobs," Jamal barked at the guards, trying to reclaim his stolen authority. "Did you sneak in here with her security? Get this crazy woman out of my office. Arrest her. She has no business being on this floor." The guards did not move an inch. They did not even blink. They remained entirely focused on him, waiting for my command. Jamal looked back at me, his chest heaving. "You are going to prison for this, Rachel. I am calling David Caldwell. I am calling the police. You are going to be escorted out of here in handcuffs, and I am going to make sure my new boss presses maximum charges." He reached into his tailored jacket pocket, frantically pulling out his smartphone. His hands were shaking so violently he almost dropped the device. He swiped at the screen desperately, trying to dial the chief legal counsel who had called him last night. "You are going to regret this." Jamal spat, his eyes wide with a frantic, desperate energy. "You are just a pathetic, jealous woman who could not stand to see me succeed. You are nothing." I let him dial. I watched him press the phone to his ear, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. I listened to the faint, continuous ringing coming from his device. Then a phone began to ring inside the boardroom. The sound came from Wyatt's coat pocket. My attorney calmly reached inside his suit, pulled out his ringing smartphone, and held it up so Jamal could see the screen. It was displaying Jamal's incoming number. David Caldwell reported directly to Wyatt. The entire legal transition team reported to me. Jamal slowly lowered his phone. The last remaining drops of blood drained from his face. His dark skin turned a sickly ashen hue. The phone slipped from his grasp, landing with a soft thud on the thick acoustic carpet. "Are you quite finished, Jamal?" I asked, leaning forward and resting my forearms on the polished mahogany table. "Or do you need another moment to scream at my security detail?" He swallowed hard. His Adam's apple bobbed in his throat. He shook his head slowly, taking a small, involuntary step backward toward the heavy oak doors. "You are not the CEO," Jamal whispered, his voice cracking with desperation. "It is a trick. It has to be a trick. You rent an apartment. You work a dead-end job. You are just Rachel." "I am Rachel," I agreed softly. "And I am also the founder and chief executive officer of Vanguard Equity." I reached out and tapped a silver button on the conference table control console. The lights in the boardroom dimmed slightly. Behind Jamal, a mechanical whirring sound filled the air. He spun around, startled. Two massive motorized projector screens dropped down from the ceiling, covering the frosted glass walls. Twin, high-definition projectors hummed to life, casting bright, crisp images across the screens for everyone in the room to see. On the left screen was Jamal's exact employment contract with Apex Innovations, complete with his compensation package, his signing bonuses, and the strict termination clauses regarding corporate theft. On the right screen was the official finalized Apex Innovations corporate buyout agreement. The document outlined the transfer of all corporate assets, intellectual property, and executive control to Vanguard Equity. And right at the bottom of the page, authorized and notarized in bold black ink, was my exact signature. Jamal stared at the massive screens, his eyes tracking the loops and sharp angles of my handwriting over and over again. He looked as if staring hard enough could magically erase the ink from the digital document. The heavy silence in the boardroom was broken only by his ragged, uneven breathing. He reached up with a trembling hand and loosened his blood-red silk tie, pulling it away from his throat, as if the room had suddenly lost all its oxygen. I extended my hand without taking my eyes off him. Wyatt placed the thick manila folder directly into my palm. I flipped it open, smoothing the top page with deliberate, slow precision. I did not need to look at the numbers because my forensic team had briefed me on every single fraudulent transaction. "Let us discuss the Asian market division budget, Jamal." I began, my voice echoing coldly off the frosted glass. "Or rather, let us discuss how you treated the Apex corporate accounts like your personal piggy bank." Jamal swallowed hard. Sweat began to bead along his hairline, catching the harsh morning light pouring through the panoramic windows. He gripped the back of the leather guest chair so tightly his knuckles turned a sickly shade of white. "Rachel, listen," he stammered, his booming corporate voice reduced to a frantic rasp. "There is a standard operating procedure for executive spending. You do not understand how high-level corporate sales work. We have to entertain. We have to project success to secure these international contracts." Projecting success, I repeated, turning a page in the folder. "A fascinating strategy. Let us look at a specific example of this strategy. Friday evening. A $45,000 catering charge at a rented Hamptons estate. You authorize this under an expense code labeled Off-Site Corporate Strategy Retreat. Tell me, Jamal, were the Beluga caviar stations critical to the Asian market expansion? Did the vintage champagne towers help close your latest quarterly deal?" Jamal's mouth opened and closed. He looked at Wyatt, then at the security guards, realizing his audience was entirely hostile. "That was a networking event," Jamal insisted, his voice trembling as he backed himself into a mental corner. "Half the guests at that table were real estate developers and executives. It was a business function. I was building relationships." "The $45,000 wedding catering stolen," I corrected sharply, cutting off his pathetic defense. "And you paid for it with embezzled company funds right in front of me. But that is just a drop in the bucket. Let us keep going line by line." I flipped to the next tab in the heavy file. "2 months ago, you purchased a custom Mercedes AMG for $140,000. You coded the invoice as a fleet vehicle upgrade. Apex Innovations does not have a corporate vehicle fleet. The Mercedes stolen. You parked a stolen vehicle in my sister's driveway and told my parents they needed to take out a second mortgage to pay you back for the wedding expenses you had already covered with my money. Jamal wiped a thick line of sweat from his forehead. His custom Tom Ford suit suddenly looked 2 sizes too big, hanging awkwardly off his slumping frame. I can explain the car, he pleaded, taking a shaky step forward. Wyatt immediately stepped between us, forcing Jamal to stay back. The Hermes bags, I continued, relentlessly ignoring his desperation. 6 designer handbags shipped directly to your residential address, totaling $90,000. Categorized as client appreciation gifts. I suppose Brittany is a very demanding client. The reality of his situation crashed down on him with the weight of an anvil. The arrogant, untouchable groom from the wedding was entirely gone. He collapsed into the leather guest chair, burying his face in his hands. The man who had mocked my rented apartment and threatened to make me fetch his coffee began to beg. "Please, Rachel," Jamal pleaded, looking up with wild, terrified eyes. "I can pay it back. I will sell the car today. I will get the designer bags back from Brittany. Just dock my pay. Deduct it from my end-of-year bonuses. I am the top revenue driver in this building. I can make this company 10 times what I took. You know my sales numbers. You need me here." "Your numbers are completely fabricated," Wyatt interjected smoothly, handing me a secondary report. "Our forensic accountants dismantled your sales logs overnight. You have been shifting projected revenue into current quarters to artificially inflate your commission payouts. The $2 million deficit is entirely your creation. You are not a top producer. You are a liability." Panic gave way to complete desperation, and that desperation mutated back into an aggressive, defensive rage. Jamal shot up from the chair, his face contorted with fury. He pointed a shaking finger at me. "You cannot do this to me," he shouted, his voice echoing off the glass walls. "I have an executive contract. I have legal protections. If you try to fire me over some creative accounting, I will sue you for everything you have. I will file a massive lawsuit for wrongful termination. I will claim breach of contract. I will drag this entire company through a discrimination lawsuit so fast your stock will plummet before lunchtime. You have no hard proof of my intent." I simply raised an eyebrow. "No proof. We have your digital signature on every fraudulent invoice. We have the routing numbers connecting the fake consulting shell companies directly to your personal offshore bank accounts." Jamal realized his legal threats were entirely useless against a billionaire's legal team. He changed tactics for the final time. His eyes widened in a frantic, manipulative plea. He dropped his voice, trying to sound intimate, vulnerable, and completely desperate. "Rachel, look at me," Jamal pleaded, holding his hands out with his palms facing up. "It is me, Jamal. We are family. Brittany is your sister. She is pregnant with your niece or nephew. If you fire me and take away my income, you are putting a pregnant woman on the street. You cannot do that to your own blood. We are family, Rachel. Family protects each other." I looked at the man who had demanded I pay $45,000 to save myself from social humiliation just 48 hours ago. I looked at the man who had laughed while my sister called me a useless fat pig in front of 200 guests. I slowly closed the manila folder. The sound was sharp and definitive in the quiet boardroom. I stood up from the heavy leather CEO chair and placed both hands flat on the polished mahogany table. I leaned over the table, bringing myself closer until I was looking directly into his terrified, desperate eyes. "You aren't being terminated, Jamal," I said, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "You're being detained." "You aren't being terminated, Jamal," I said, my voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "You're being detained." Jamal recoiled as if physically struck. The blood that had rushed to his face during his desperate plea now drained away completely, leaving him looking hollow and entirely broken. He opened his mouth to argue, to deploy one last manipulative tactic, but I did not give him the oxygen. I raised my right hand and snapped my fingers once. The sharp sound cracked like a whip in the silent boardroom. The 2 massive security guards who had been standing rigidly by the panoramic windows moved with terrifying synchronized precision. They closed the distance to the mahogany table in 3 long strides. Jamal tried to scramble backward, his expensive leather shoes slipping on the thick acoustic carpet, but he was far too slow. The guard on the left clamped a hand down on Jamal's shoulder, pinning him firmly against the high-backed guest chair. The grip was not violent, but it carried the undeniable crushing weight of absolute authority. "Get your hands off me!" Jamal sputtered, his voice cracking into a high-pitched squeak. "You have no legal right to touch me. I know my rights." "You lost your rights the moment you routed $2 million of my corporate funds into a Cayman Islands shell company," Wyatt stated coldly, stepping forward with a clipboard. He pulled a pen from his breast pocket and tapped the top sheet of paper. "We are executing a full corporate asset seizure effective immediately. Your personal belongings will be mailed to your residence pending federal review. Right now you are going to hand over every piece of Apex Innovations property on your person." The guard on the right did not wait for Jamal to comply. He reached forward and expertly unclipped the platinum and blue employee badge secured to Jamal's lapel. The small plastic rectangle, the ultimate symbol of Jamal's false corporate kingdom, was tossed onto the mahogany table. Next, the guard patted down Jamal's custom Tom Ford jacket. He reached into the inner breast pocket and retrieved the sleek corporate smartphone, dropping it right next to the badge. "My briefcase," Jamal protested weakly, gesturing toward the leather bag resting on the floor. "My personal keys are in there." Wyatt bent down and unlatched the briefcase. He pulled out the silver Apex Innovations laptop, setting it beside the phone and the badge. He then turned the briefcase upside down, dumping its contents onto the table. A jumble of pens, mints, business cards, and a set of car keys clattered against the wood. Wyatt picked up the car keys, identifying the gleaming Mercedes logo. "The fleet vehicle upgrade," Wyatt noted dryly. He pocketed the keys. "You can keep the mints." Wyatt handed Jamal a standard-issue cheap plastic bin containing his house keys, his personal wallet, and his personal cell phone. The visual contrast between the arrogant groom from the Hamptons and the disgraced fraudster clutching a plastic bin was absolute poetry. "Escort him out," I commanded, turning my chair back toward the panoramic window to admire the Manhattan skyline. The view was exceptionally clear today. "Take him through the main sales floor. Let his department see exactly what happens to thieves in my company." Jamal gasped. "Rachel, please," he begged, his voice entirely devoid of pride. "Do not do this. Do not walk me through the bullpen. Henderson is out there. My entire team is out there. Just let me take the executive elevator to the parking garage. I will leave quietly. I swear to you, I will never bother you again. Please spare me this." I did not turn around. I simply waved my hand toward the heavy oak doors. The security guards hoisted Jamal to his feet. They did not drag him, but they held him firmly by the biceps, Frog marching him out of the boardroom and down the hushed executive corridor. Jamal stumbled, his expensive shoes catching on the carpet, his perfectly styled appearance unraveling with every forced step. They reached the main elevator bank and descended to the 12th floor. The doors slid open to reveal the sprawling, open-plan sales department. It was a hive of aggressive corporate energy, filled with ringing phones, shouting brokers, and the relentless hum of high-stakes commerce. But the moment the heavy security doors swung open and the guards marched Jamal onto the floor, the entire department froze. It happened like a wave of paralysis sweeping across the room. One by one, employees stopped typing. Telephones were lowered to desks. The shouting died down until the massive room was engulfed in a suffocating, heavy silence. Dozens of pairs of eyes locked onto the scene unfolding in the central aisle. Jamal, the man who had terrorized this floor, who had belittled interns and screamed at managers to secure his fraudulent commissions, was being marched out like a common criminal. His custom suit jacket was rumpled, pulled awkwardly by the guard's firm grips. He clutched his pathetic plastic bin against his chest. His head bowed, his eyes darting frantically across the faces of the people he used to bully. He saw Henderson, the regional manager he had barked at earlier that morning. Henderson stood up from his desk, his arms crossed, watching Jamal's downfall with a look of cold, unblinking satisfaction. Jamal tried to offer a weak, reassuring nod, a desperate attempt to pretend this was all a massive misunderstanding, but Henderson simply turned his back. Near the exit, standing by the printing station, was the nervous intern from the executive elevator. The young man still held a stack of documents, But he stood perfectly still watching the man who had threatened his internship just an hour ago being forcibly removed from the premises. Jamal squeezed his eyes shut, unable to bear the weight of their collective judgment. The humiliation was absolute, burning through his veins like battery acid. He was entirely stripped of his power, his status, and his dignity. The guards pushed him through the final set of double doors, marching him through the grand marble lobby where he had strutted so proudly that morning. The receptionist watched in wide-eyed shock as they bypassed the front desk entirely and headed